Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. Every situation is unique, and domestic relations laws vary significantly by state, county, and individual jurisdiction. We strongly encourage you to conduct your own due diligence and consult with a licensed attorney or a qualified professional in your specific area before making any decisions regarding your legal status, assets, or family structure. Imagine living in a town where the nearest courthouse is a 2-hour drive away. The only lawyer within 50 miles is your spouse's second cousin, and your local library has a legal section that hasn't been updated since the 1990s. This is the reality for millions of Americans living in what sociologists and legal experts call legal deserts. In these vast rural stretches of the United States, the traditional path to ending a marriage isn't just emotionally taxing. It's geographically and financially impossible. But a quiet revolution is happening. People are no longer waiting for the system to come to them. They are enrolling in what has been colloquially termed Divorce University, an unofficial but powerful ecosystem of online education, digital filing tools, and virtual mediation that is leveling the playing field for the rural population. The statistic that should stop you in your tracks is this. In many rural counties across the Midwest and the Deep South, there is less than one lawyer for every 1,000 residents. Compare that to an urban center like Washington, D.C., where you might find one lawyer for every 12 people. When you are stuck in a legal desert, you are facing a geographic tax on your freedom. Today, we are breaking down the masterclass on how to navigate this. We are exploring the exact roadmap for accessing high-level divorce education and administrative tools from a farmhouse in Nebraska or a mountain cabin in Appalachia. This video solves the primary problem of the rural divide: the lack of access to specialized information. By the end of this deep dive, you will understand the historical trends of pro-se representation, the step-by-step process of using online dispute resolution systems, and how to bypass the physical barriers of the traditional court system. To understand why an online divorce university approach is necessary, we first have to look at the historical trends of rural legal access. For decades, the American legal system has been built on the assumption of physical presence. You file papers at a physical desk, you argue before a physical judge, you sit in a physical room with a mediator. This infrastructure works if you live in a city with public transit. It fails miserably in rural communities where the rural penalty kicks in. The rural penalty is the cumulative cost of lost wages, fuel, and childcare required just to show up for a 10-minute procedural hearing. Case studies from the American Bar Association suggest that for a rural resident, the cost of a divorce can be 30% higher than for a suburban resident, simply due to the logistical hurdles of distance. This is where the concept of the online university comes in. It isn't a brick-and-mortar school. It is a mindset and a toolkit. The first pillar of this curriculum is the shift toward pro-se representation, which is a Latin term meaning for oneself. In the past, representing yourself was seen as a desperate last resort. However, data from the last decade shows that in some jurisdictions, upwards of 80% of domestic relations cases involve at least one self-represented party. The online university approach turns this from a desperate move into a strategic one. It involves utilizing state-sponsored portals and private educational platforms to learn the specific rules of civil procedure that apply to your county. Let's look at a specific example of how this functions in a rural context. Take Utah or Texas, states that have been pioneers in online dispute resolution, or ODR. In these states, the university is built directly into the court's website. Instead of driving to a courthouse, a resident in a remote ranching community can log into a portal that guides them through a series of if-then questions. This is called a guided interview. It is essentially a digital tutor that ensures your paperwork is formatted correctly before it ever reaches a clerk's hands. This prevents the common rural heartbreak of driving 3 hours to a courthouse only to be told your forms are the wrong color or missing a specific local addendum. But the university goes deeper than just forms. It involves the unbundling of legal services. Historical trends in the legal industry show a move away from the full-service retainer model toward limited-scope representation. For someone in a rural community, this is a game-changer. You might not be able to afford or even find a local lawyer to handle your entire case from start to finish. However, through online platforms, you can hire an expert for a 1-hour virtual consultation to review your settlement agreement. This is the tutoring aspect of the online university. You are doing the heavy lifting yourself, but you are bringing in a specialist to check your work. The digital divide, however, is the dragon that every rural resident must slay. You cannot attend a divorce university without a stable internet connection, and according to FCC data, millions of rural Americans still lack reliable broadband. We see case studies where residents are using innovative workarounds to access these online resources. This includes using Starlink satellite systems to attend virtual mediation sessions from areas that previously had zero connectivity, or utilizing the hotspot programs at local rural libraries, which have become the unofficial satellite campuses for these legal proceedings. We also have to discuss the curriculum of emotional and parental education. In many states, if children are involved, the court requires a parenting class. In a traditional setting, this meant finding a Saturday where a social worker was hosting a seminar in a town 50 miles away. The online transition has moved these classes to video-on-demand platforms. These courses cover conflict resolution, the psychology of transition for children, and co-parenting strategies. While some might view these as a hurdle, the university perspective sees them as essential credits. They provide a structured framework for a process that is otherwise chaotic. Furthermore, the shift to virtual hearings has rewritten the rules of the game. During the early 2020s, the legal system was forced to digitize overnight. What started as a temporary measure has become a permanent fixture in many rural circuits. A judge in a rural county might oversee 3 different counties in a single circuit. Before, that judge would spend hours on the road. Now that judge can hold a Zoom motion hour. For the rural resident, this means you can attend your hearing from your home office or even your vehicle, provided you have a signal. This eliminates the visibility bias, where people who couldn't afford to take a whole day off work to travel were often penalized by the court for non-appearance. However, entering this online world requires a high degree of digital literacy. You are essentially becoming your own paralegal. You have to learn how to scan documents into PDF format, how to use digital signatures like DocuSign, which are increasingly accepted in rural courts, and how to navigate e-filing systems like File and Serve Express. The degree you earn from this divorce university isn't just the final decree of divorce. It is a masterclass in navigating modern American bureaucracy. We must also address the cost-benefit analysis. A traditional contested divorce in the United States can easily exceed $15,000 to $20,000 in legal fees. For a family in a rural community where the median income might be lower than the national average, this is a catastrophic sum. The online university approach, focusing on education, mediation, and self-filing, can often bring those costs down to under $2,000, including filing fees. This isn't about being cheap, it's about being sustainable. It's about ensuring that the end of a marriage doesn't mean the beginning of a decade of debt. In the next sections of this series, we will dive into the specific technological tools you need, the state-by-state variations in e-filing, and how to vet an online mediator to ensure they are legitimate. But for now, understand this. The gates of the legal system are no longer guarded by a lack of proximity. The information is out there, the tools are ready, and the university is open for enrollment. If you are willing to do the work, the distance to the courthouse no longer defines your ability to seek a new beginning. The first module in this digital curriculum involves mastering the geography of your specific jurisdiction without ever leaving your kitchen table. In 2026, the landscape of the American legal system has shifted from marble hallways to encrypted portals, but the complexity remains. To start, you must identify your state's primary self-help clearinghouse. Every state, from Alaska to Florida, has a judicial branch website that serves as the foundation for your education. Historical trends show that these sites have evolved from simple static lists of addresses into interactive, logic-based engines. In states like Illinois or California, these are often branded as help centers or self-help portals. For a rural resident, this is the registrar's office of your divorce university. Imagine a resident named Sarah living in a remote pocket of the Missouri Ozarks in 2026. Sarah is 3 hours away from the nearest legal aid office and even further from a specialized family law firm. For Sarah, the online university begins with the Missouri Courting Information System. Her first task is not to file a document, but to complete the mandatory educational modules required by her circuit. In 2026, many rural circuits have integrated video-based learning that explains the difference between a contested and an uncontested filing. Sarah must learn that if she and her spouse agree on all terms, she is looking at an administrative path. If they disagree on even one item, such as the division of a specific piece of farm equipment or the primary residence of a child, She enters the litigation track. The data suggests that the biggest barrier to entry for rural residents is the fear of the unknown process. To solve this, the online university provides what are known as document assembly programs. Think of this like tax software but for your marriage. Instead of staring at a blank PDF of a petition for dissolution of marriage, Sarah uses a program like Law Help Interactive or a state-specific guided interview. The system asks her questions in plain English. How long have you lived in this county? Do you own real estate? Are there children of the marriage? As she types her answers, the software is working in the background, populating the complex legal forms required by the state. This eliminates the historical trend of clerks rejecting paperwork for minor formatting errors. In 2026, the precision of these tools has reduced rejection rates by over 40% in rural districts that have fully adopted them. Step 1 is the petition. This is the document that tells the court who you are, who your spouse is, and what you want the court to do. In a rural context, you must be hyper-specific about the grounds for divorce. While most states are now no-fault, meaning you only need to state that the marriage is irretrievably broken, some rural jurisdictions still require specific language to satisfy local judicial preferences. The online university teaches you to look for your local rules of court. These are the hidden curriculum. Every county has them. They might dictate the font size, the color of the digital border, or the specific way you must list your assets. In 2026, many of these local rules are being standardized, but the savvy rural student knows to check the standing orders of their specific judge. Once the documents are assembled, we move to the technology of filing. This is where the rural divide was once the widest, but in 2026, e-filing is the gold standard. Systems like Odyssey File and Serve or TurboCourt have become the digital couriers of the legal world. For Sarah in the Ozarks, e-filing means she doesn't have to worry about the post office losing her documents or the courthouse being closed for a local holiday when she arrives. She uploads her assembled PDF, pays the filing fee via a secure portal, and receives a time-stamped receipt instantly. Case studies from 2025 and early 2026 indicate that rural residents using e-filing systems see their cases move through the initial processing phase 25% faster than those using traditional mail-in methods. However, there is a financial hurdle: the filing fee. In many states, this can range from $200 to $450. For a rural household on a tight budget, this is a significant barrier. This is where the Divorce University teaches a vital lesson on the informa pauperis process, commonly known as a fee waiver. Historical trends show that many rural residents assume that if they cannot afford the fee, they cannot access the court. The online university corrects this misconception by providing the fee waiver application as a core component of the initial filing package. You must provide a detailed snapshot of your financial life, your income, your expenses, and your assets. If you meet the state's indigency requirements, the court may waive the filing fees entirely. This is a critical step in ensuring that the legal system is not a pay-to-play environment for the rural population. But what happens after you file? This brings us to the most daunting part of the curriculum: service of process. You have told the court you want a divorce, but now you must legally notify your spouse. In a city, you would hire a professional process server. In a rural community, your spouse might live down a private road that is not on any map, or they might be working in a remote field. The online university explores the alternative methods of service. If your spouse is cooperative, they can sign a waiver of service. This is the most efficient path. If they are not, you might have to coordinate with the local county sheriff's office. In 2026, many rural sheriffs have integrated digital request systems where you can upload the papers and pay the service fee online. The university teaches you how to track this service and how to file the proof of service with the court. Without that proof, your case stands still. It is the gatekeeper document of the entire process. To manage all of this, the rural student must maintain a digital evidence locker. Imagine if you had a fireproof safe but for your digital life. This involves using encrypted cloud storage to hold copies of every filed document, every receipt, and every communication from the court. In 2026, cybersecurity is a primary concern. The university advises using two-factor authentication and dedicated folders for your legal correspondence. Case studies show that residents who maintain a chronological digital file are much less likely to miss a deadline or lose a critical piece of evidence during the discovery phase. This is the organizational backbone of your self-representation. The curriculum then shifts to the financial affidavit. This is the most labor-intensive part of the university. You are essentially performing a forensic audit of your own life. You must list every bank account, every debt, every retirement fund, and every piece of property. For rural residents, this often includes complex assets like agricultural land, livestock, or specialized machinery. The online university provides templates specifically designed for rural assets, ensuring that you don't forget to account for things like water rights, mineral rights, or crop subsidies. Historical trends indicate that omission of these assets is one of the leading causes of post-divorce litigation. By learning how to value these assets through online valuation tools and local tax records, you are protecting your future stability. As you master these initial modules, you start to see the bridge forming between your remote location and the halls of justice. You are no longer a passive observer of your own legal fate. You are an active participant with the tools to navigate a system that was once designed to exclude you. But filing the papers and serving your spouse is only the beginning of the journey. The real test of your online education comes when the court speaks back. What happens when you receive a notice for your first case management conference? What do you do if the judge expects you to appear on a screen instead of in person? And more importantly, how do you handle the high-stakes negotiation of your life's work without a lawyer standing by your side? The next phase of this masterclass moves from the paperwork into the digital courtroom itself. We will break down the exact etiquette of a virtual hearing, the technical setup you need to ensure you are heard, and the psychological strategies for representing yourself before a judge. You have cleared the first hurdle of the university, but the most intense sessions are yet to come. Because once the system acknowledges your case, the clock starts ticking on your final decree, and every move you make in the digital space will determine the next 30 years of your life. Next, we are looking at the virtual mediation room where the real deals are made or broken. The virtual mediation room is the core elective of our divorce university curriculum, and in 2026, it is where the majority of rural domestic cases are actually resolved. To understand the gravity of this stage, imagine a resident named Michael who lives on a sprawling cattle ranch in a remote corner of Montana. For Michael, the nearest mediation center is a 4-hour drive through mountain passes that are often impassable in the winter. In the old world, Michael would have to postpone his life for days just to sit in a sterile conference room. In 2026, Michael enters the virtual mediation room from his home office, utilizing a high-speed satellite connection that has finally bridged the gap between the frontier and the forum. Virtual mediation is not a court hearing. It is a facilitated negotiation. The goal of this module is to teach you how to navigate a space that is one part technology and one part high-stakes psychology. Historical trends from 2024 to 2026 show that cases settled in virtual mediation have a 15% higher rate of long-term compliance compared to those decided by a judge. Why? Because in this digital room, you are the one holding the pen. You are not having a solution imposed on you, you are constructing it. The step-by-step process begins with the selection of your mediator. In a rural community, your local options might be limited or non-existent. The online university approach allows you to source a mediator from across the entire state. If you are in rural Montana, you can hire a top-tier mediator based in Missoula or Billings who specializes in agricultural assets. Your vetting process should involve checking the state's court-approved mediator list, which is typically hosted on the judicial branch website. You are looking for someone with a background in the specific issues your case presents, whether that is complex property division, specialized parenting schedules for long-distance families, or the nuances of small business valuation. Once the mediator is selected, the pre-mediation phase begins. This is your homework. You will be asked to submit a mediation brief. In the online university, we view the brief as your opening argument. This is a digital document where you outline your position on every contested issue. For Michael, this means detailing the history of the ranch, the current market value of the livestock, and his proposed schedule for when his children will visit during the summer months. Step 1 is ensuring this brief is uploaded to the mediator secure portal at least 48 hours in advance. This allows the mediator to enter the virtual room with a roadmap of the conflict. Now let's talk about the technology stack of the virtual room. In 2026, most mediators use platforms like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or specialized legal software like Modria. Your technical setup is your professional uniform. You need a stable internet connection, a high-definition webcam, and most importantly, a private, quiet space. Imagine if Michael tried to conduct his mediation from the cab of a tractor with the engine running. The mediator would struggle to hear his points, and the spouse's attorney would likely object to the lack of privacy. The university teaches that your physical environment reflects your mental preparation. You must be in a room where you cannot be overheard, especially if children are in the house. The structure of the session usually follows a specific rhythm: the joint session and the caucus. The joint session is when everyone is on the screen at once. The mediator explains the rules of engagement. In the digital space, the university teaches a specific etiquette. Wait for the other person to finish speaking entirely before unmuting your microphone. Lag time is a reality of rural internet, and jumping in too early creates a chaotic audio environment that heightens tension. Case studies suggest that the most successful self-represented parties are those who use the mute button strategically to prevent emotional outbursts from being broadcast to the entire group. The caucus is where the real work happens. This is when the mediator places you and your spouse into separate virtual breakout rooms. The mediator then moves between these rooms, acting as a shuttle diplomat. This is a critical psychological advantage of the online university. In a physical office, you might feel intimidated by seeing your spouse in the hallway or hearing their voice through a thin wall. In a virtual breakout room, you have a digital buffer. This allows you to speak candidly with the mediator about your concerns without the immediate pressure of a face-to-face confrontation. For someone like Michael, this buffer allows him to calmly explain the financial necessity of keeping the ranch intact without the emotional interference of a high-conflict interaction. During these breakout sessions, you will engage in the pie-splitting phase. This is where you move from positions to interests. A position is, I want the ranch. An interest is, I need to ensure the ranch stays in the family so I have an income stream to support the children. The mediator's job is to help you find overlapping interests. In 2026, mediators often use real-time screen sharing to edit a spreadsheet of assets. As you agree on the value of a vehicle or the division of a savings account, the mediator updates the document in front of your eyes. This visual feedback is essential. It turns abstract arguments into concrete data points. However, the online university also prepares you for the impasse. This is the moment when negotiations stall. Perhaps Michael and his spouse cannot agree on the valuation of the mineral rights on the back 40 acres. In 2026, the savvy rural student knows that an impasse on one issue does not mean the entire mediation is a failure. You can reach a partial agreement. You can settle 90% of your case and reserve the remaining 10% for a judge to decide. This is a vital strategy for resource management. By settling the easy issues in mediation, you drastically reduce the time and cost of a potential trial. If you do reach a full agreement, the mediator will draft what is known as a memorandum of understanding or a term sheet. In the digital age, this document is often finalized through collaborative editing software. You will review it, perhaps send it to a limited-scope attorney for a quick document review session, and then sign it electronically using a service like Adobe Sign or DocuSign. Once signed, this document is a contract. It is the blueprint for your final decree. But here is where the open loop begins. Reaching an agreement in mediation is a massive victory, but it is not the final step. A signed piece of paper from a mediator is not a divorce decree. You still have to cross the finish line of the court system. And in 2026, the gap between a signed agreement and a final judgment can be filled with administrative traps that can restart the entire clock. How do you ensure your agreement actually gets accepted by a judge who has never met you? How do you handle a final hearing when the judge starts asking questions about the very terms you just fought for? The next phase of our masterclass moves from the negotiation table to the virtual bench. We are going to break down the prove-up hearing, the final high-stakes ritual where your digital education is put to the ultimate test. You've mastered the forms, you've navigated the mediation, but now you must stand before the court. We'll show you exactly how to present your agreement so it's bulletproof, ensuring that your journey through the divorce university ends not in a rejection, but in the finality of a signed decree. The prove-up hearing is the final examination in your journey through the divorce university, and in 2026, this ritual has been almost entirely digitized for rural residents. To understand the stakes, imagine a resident named Linda living in a small farming community in western Kansas. The year is 2026, and Linda has successfully navigated the paperwork and the mediation phases we discussed previously. Now she faces the final gatekeeper, the judge. In the traditional legal era, Linda would have had to take a full day off from her job at the local cooperative, dress in formal attire, and sit in a crowded gallery for hours just for a 10-minute window with the court. In the modern online university model, Linda prepares for this moment from her home office. knowing that her physical absence from the courthouse does not diminish the legal gravity of the proceedings. A prove-up hearing is technically the process of presenting evidence to the court to show that the requirements for a divorce have been met, and that any written agreement is fair and equitable. Even if you and your spouse have agreed on everything, the judge still has a statutory duty to review the terms. Step 1 of this module is the technical rehearsal. In 2026, rural courts primarily use platforms like WebEx or specialized state-run judicial portals. Historical trends show that the most common reason for a hearing being rescheduled is not a legal error, but a technical failure. Linda's preparation involves a hardwired internet connection. Relying on fluctuating Wi-Fi in a rural area is a risk she cannot afford. She ensures her camera is at eye level, and that her background is neutral and professional. The university teaches that in a virtual courtroom, your screen is your sanctuary. Any clutter, noise from pets, or interruptions from family members can be interpreted by a judge as a lack of respect for the court's authority. Once the connection is established, Linda enters a virtual waiting room. This is a digital space where she might see other cases being processed. It is a vital opportunity for observation. In 2026, many judges allow self-represented parties to watch a few minutes of previous hearings to understand the flow. When Linda's case is called, the bailiff or the court clerk will bring her into the main session. This is where the script begins. Every state has a specific set of jurisdictional questions that must be answered on the record. These are the foundational bricks of your divorce. Linda must state her full name, her current address, and confirm that she has met the state's residency requirements, typically 6 months in the state and 90 days in the county. The next phase of the script involves the grounds for divorce. Linda will be asked if the marriage is irretrievably broken, and if there is any hope for reconciliation. In a no-fault state, a simple yes to the first and no to the second is sufficient. However, the university teaches you to answer these questions with clarity and without unnecessary elaboration. The judge is looking for specific legal triggers to grant the decree, not a detailed history of the relationship's demise. The heart of the prove-up is the presentation of the marital settlement agreement. In 2026, the judge will have the digital file open on their screen. Linda must be prepared to testify that she read the agreement, that she signed it voluntarily, and that she believes the division of assets and debts is fair. This is where the judge's role as a gatekeeper becomes visible. Case studies from 2025 indicate that judges are increasingly scrutinizing self-represented agreements to ensure they aren't unconscionable. Unconscionable is a legal term meaning so one-sided that it shocks the conscience of the court. If Linda agreed to give her spouse 100% of the marital assets while assuming 100% of the debt, the judge might pause the hearing to ask if she truly understands the long-term potential outcomes of such a decision. The online university prepares you for this scrutiny by ensuring your financial affidavits, which we covered in Part 2, align perfectly with the agreement you are presenting. If children are involved, the scrutiny intensifies. The judge will focus on the parenting plan and the child support worksheet. In 2026, most rural courts utilize a standardized best interests of the child manual that judges must follow. Linda must testify that the proposed schedule provides the children with frequent and continuing contact with both parents, and that the child support amount meets the state's guidelines. If the amount deviates from the guidelines, Linda must provide a compelling educational reason why, such as a specialized medical need or a unique travel arrangement necessitated by their rural location. Historical trends show that deviations without a clear, documented reason are the #1 cause for a judge to reject an agreement during a prove-up. Imagine if Linda's spouse, despite signing the agreement, decides to appear at the hearing and raise a last-minute objection. This is a high-stress scenario that the university covers in its advanced modules. In 2026, judges in rural districts have little patience for trial by ambush. If an agreement was signed and notarized, the judge will typically hold the parties to that agreement, unless there is evidence of fraud or duress. Linda is taught to remain calm, refer back to the signed document, and remind the court that the mediation process was comprehensive. This is why keeping the digital evidence locker we mentioned in Part 2 is so critical. Having the time-stamped mediation summary ready to screen share can instantly resolve a dispute and keep the case on track. Assuming the judge finds everything in order, they will state their findings on the record. This is the moment where the judge verbally grants the divorce. However, the university teaches a vital distinction. Being told you are divorced is not the same as being legally divorced. The final step is the entry of the judgment of dissolution. In 2026, this is done through an automated e-signing queue. The judge applies a digital signature and a court seal to the final decree. Linda will receive a notification through her e-filing portal within minutes or hours. She must immediately download and save multiple copies of this certified decree. This document is the only thing that allows her to change her name, update her tax filing status, or refinance her home. The prove-up hearing concludes the formal litigation phase of the divorce university, but for the rural resident, the work is not yet finished. A decree is a set of instructions, and the final modules of the curriculum focus on the execution of those instructions. How do you transfer a car title when the nearest DMV is 60 miles away? How do you divide a retirement account without spending thousands on a specialized lawyer? And most importantly, how do you handle the complex task of co-parenting across vast distances when the digital tools of the court are no longer actively monitoring your every move? The next phase of our masterclass shifts from the courtroom to the reality of the aftermath. We are going to explore the post-decree implementation phase, specifically focusing on the division of specialized rural assets like 401ks, pension plans, and agricultural property. We will break down the QDRO process, the Qualified Domestic Relations Order, which is the hidden trap that catches many self-represented parties after they think their case is over. You've earned your decree, but now we have to make sure that decree actually results in the transfer of the assets you fought for. Next, we are tackling the world of retirement division and the administrative hurdles of the rural restart. The entry of a final decree of divorce is often mistaken for the finish line, but in the divorce university curriculum, this is merely the commencement of the post-decree implementation phase. In 2026, the complexity of moving assets between former spouses is governed by a secondary set of administrative hurdles that can be more daunting than the divorce itself. Imagine a resident named Robert, living in a small ranching community in northern Wyoming. Robert has his signed decree in hand, stating he is entitled to 50% of his former spouse's 401k and the full title to their shared ranch house. In the old world, Robert might have assumed that the judge's signature was enough to move the money and the deed. In 2026, he quickly learns about the Qualified Domestic Relations Order, or QDRO, the hidden trap that catches thousands of self-represented parties every year. A QDRO is a specialized legal order that instructs a retirement plan administrator on how to divide a pension or 401k account without triggering immediate taxes or early withdrawal penalties. For a rural resident like Robert, the nearest plan administrator for a major corporation might be in a skyscraper in New York or Charlotte, thousands of miles from his Wyoming home. The first step in this post-decree module is understanding that a divorce decree alone does not move retirement funds. Historical trends show that many individuals wait years to file a QDRO, only to find that the funds have been depleted or the plan rules have changed, leading to disastrous financial outcomes. The step-by-step process of the QDRO starts with the plan administrator. Robert must use his online university tools to locate the summary plan description for his former spouse's retirement account. In 2026, most major retirement plans have a dedicated QDRO desk or an online portal for participants and their former spouses. Robert's first task is to request the plan's model language. Every retirement plan has its own specific vocabulary and requirements. If Robert tries to draft a QDRO using generic templates found on the internet, the plan administrator will likely reject it, often after a 3-month review period. By using the plan's own model language as a foundation, Robert ensures that his document speaks the specific dialect of that financial institution. Once the model language is obtained, Robert must draft the order. In 2026, several online platforms have emerged that specialize in generating court-ready QDROs for a fraction of the cost of a traditional actuary. Robert inputs the data from his decree, the name of the plan, the exact dollar amount or percentage to be transferred, and the date of the valuation. A critical lesson here involves the valuation date. If the market fluctuates between the date of the divorce and the date the QDRO is processed, the actual amount transferred can vary significantly. Robert is taught to specify whether he is entitled to investment gains or losses on his share from the date of the decree until the date of distribution. Case studies indicate that neglecting this single clause can result in the loss of thousands of dollars in potential market growth. After the QDRO is drafted, it must be sent to the plan administrator for pre-approval. This is a digital handshake. Robert uploads the draft to the portal, and a specialist reviews it to ensure it complies with federal ERISA laws. Only after this pre-approval is granted does Robert file the order with his local Wyoming court. Because the judge has already signed the final decree, the QDRO is usually handled as a ministerial act. The judge signs it and the clerk stamps it. Robert then sends the certified, court-signed QDRO back to the plan administrator for final execution. Only then, months after the divorce was finalized, does the money move into Robert's own individual retirement account. While the retirement funds are in transit, Robert must turn his attention to the physical assets, specifically the ranch house. In a rural community, the land is often the most valuable asset, and the deed is the only proof of ownership. The divorce decree might say the house is Robert's, but the county land records still show both names. To fix this, the online university teaches the mastery of the quitclaim deed. This is a simple document where one spouse releases all interest in a property to the other. In 2026, many rural counties in Wyoming and across the U.S. have adopted e-recording systems like Simplifile or CSC. Robert does not need to drive to the county seat to file this deed. He can use a mobile notary service, a professional who travels to his remote location to verify his former spouse's signature, or in many states, he can use remote online notarization, where the signing is witnessed over a secure video call. Once the deed is signed and notarized, Robert uploads it to the county's e-recording portal and pays the recording fee. Within 24 hours, the public record is updated. This step is vital for Robert's future stability. Without a clean deed in his name, he cannot refinance the property, pull out equity for ranch operations, or eventually sell the land. Vehicle titles present another rural logistical challenge. In 2026, many states have moved to electronic titles, or e-titles. For Robert to remove his former spouse's name from the ranch truck, he must navigate the state's Department of Motor Vehicles online portal. This often requires a digital copy of the divorce decree and a specific affidavit of repossession or transfer per a court order. If the truck still has a lien from a local bank, Robert must also coordinate with the lender to issue a new title. Rural resident, this is a test of patience, as it involves multiple layers of digital bureaucracy. Beyond property and vehicles, the online university addresses the most personal of administrative hurdles, the name change. For those choosing to revert to a previous name, the journey involves a cascade of identity updates. In 2026, this starts with the Social Security Administration. While some parts of the process have been digitized, the SSA often still requires the physical mailing of a certified copy of the divorce decree. Robert's former spouse, if she were changing her name, would have to track this document through the mail, wait for the new Social Security card, and only then update her driver's license, passport, and bank accounts. Historical trends suggest that the average person spends over 40 hours of administrative labor to fully restore their previous name across all state and federal systems. The final piece of this post-decree module is the establishment of the Rural Restart. This involves separating combined utilities, insurance policies, and credit accounts. In a rural setting, utility companies like electric cooperatives often have long-standing accounts tied to a specific property and name. Robert must learn how to transfer the membership in the coop to ensure his lights stay on, and his credit isn't impacted by his former spouse's future actions. He must also navigate the separation of family cell phone plans and shared streaming services, which in 2026 have become significant line items in a household budget. As Robert completes these tasks, he realizes that the divorce university has prepared him for more than just a legal exit. It has given him the tools for a functional entry into his new life. He has secured his retirement, solidified his land ownership, and updated his identity. But as he looks at his new, solo financial landscape, a new challenge emerges. The decree divided the assets, but it also divided the debts. And in a rural economy where credit is the lifeblood of the season, a joint debt left unpaid can sink a restart before it even begins. The next phase of our masterclass dives into the high-stakes world of debt management and credit restoration. We are going to explore how to untangle joint credit cards, how to handle a mortgage that you can no longer afford on a single income, and the specific strategies for protecting your credit score during the most volatile year of your life. You've moved the assets, but now we have to make sure the debts don't follow you into your future. Next, we are looking at the financial defense curriculum, credit, debt, and the Rural Single Income Survival Guide. The transition from a dual-income household to a single-income reality in a rural environment is not just a lifestyle change. It is a complex financial restructuring that requires a specific set of skills from the online divorce university curriculum. In 2026, The financial landscape for rural Americans is marked by a unique intersection of high logistical costs and digital banking evolution. To see how this plays out in real time, imagine a character named David, who lives in a small township in rural Iowa. David has just finished the formal legal process, but as he sits at his desk in 2026, he realizes that while the court decree says his former spouse is responsible for the joint credit card and the loan on the combined harvester, the banks still have his name on the original contracts. This is the first and most dangerous lesson of the financial defense module. A divorce decree does not override a contract with a third-party lender. Historical trends in the mid-2020s show that thousands of rural residents see their credit scores plummet in the 18 months following a divorce, not because they are irresponsible, but because they assume the legal decree protects them from joint liability. David's first step in his financial defense is a comprehensive credit audit. In 2026, this involves more than just checking a score. It requires a deep dive into the credit report to identify every single account marked as joint or authorized user. Case studies from recent years indicate that even small, forgotten accounts, like a joint store card at a regional farm supply outlet, can become a ticking time bomb if the other party fails to make a payment. David must contact every lender individually. For the credit cards, the university strategy is clear. If the balance is zero, close the account. If there is a balance, David must request that the account be frozen to new charges, while the remaining balance is paid off according to the decree. The mortgage is the centerpiece of David's survival plan. In 2026, interest rates have stabilized but remain significantly higher than the historic lows of the previous decade. If David's decree states he gets to keep the house, he usually has two paths: refinancing or mortgage assumption. Refinancing in a 2026 market could mean his monthly payment doubles, because he is moving from a 3% rate to a 6 or 7% rate. This is where David uses the university secret of the mortgage assumption. Some loans, particularly FHA, VA, or USDA loans common in rural Iowa, may be assumable. This means David can petition the lender to remove his former spouse's name, while keeping the original low interest rate. The step-by-step process involves requesting an assumption package from the mortgage servicer. David must prove he can afford the payments on his own income, a process called qualifying as a solo borrower. If the lender approves, David saves his credit and his cash flow, a potential outcome that often means the difference between staying on the land and being forced to sell. However, David faces a unique rural challenge: agricultural debt. In rural communities, personal and business debt are often inextricably linked. The loan for the new irrigation system or the tractor is likely a joint obligation with a local agricultural bank. In 2026, these banks have moved to highly automated risk assessment models. If David's debt-to-income ratio spikes because he is now a single-income household, the bank may call the loan or refuse to renew his annual operating line of credit. David's defense strategy involves an early disclosure meeting with his loan officer. By bringing his digital evidence locker, including his certified decree and his new solo business plan, David can work to bifurcate the debt before a missed payment occurs. Historical trends suggest that rural bankers are more likely to work with a borrower who proactively presents a restructuring plan than one who waits for a default. Now we must look at the Rural Single-Income Survival Guide for daily cash flow. In 2026, the rural penalty is a tangible cost. David lives 20 miles from the nearest discount grocery store and 30 miles from his primary job. With fuel prices fluctuating, his transportation costs as a single person are now a much higher percentage of his budget. The university curriculum teaches the 70-20-10 rule, adapted for rural 2026. 70% of his income goes to essentials, 20% to debt reduction and credit repair, and 10% is his distance buffer. This buffer is specifically for the mechanical failures or fuel spikes that are catastrophic in remote areas. David must also navigate the utility split. In rural Iowa, his electricity likely comes from a cooperative. In 2026, these co-ops have strict capital credit rules. If the account was in both names, David needs to ensure the membership is transferred solely to him, so that future dividends and voting rights stay with the property. He must also do a digital audit of recurring subscriptions. In the dual-income era, David and his spouse had 4 different streaming services, a satellite radio subscription, and 2 different cloud storage plans. On a single income in 2026, David must prune these digital leaks. Case studies show that the average household can recover nearly $200 a month by simply auditing their invisible digital expenditures. Credit restoration is the final pillar of this module. Even if David does everything right, the sheer act of closing joint accounts might cause a temporary dip in his score. In 2026, David uses credit builder tools that are specifically designed for people post-divorce. These involve small, secured loans or reporting his on-time utility and rent payments to the credit bureaus. The potential outcome is a stabilized score within 12 to 24 months, allowing him to eventually qualify for the solo equipment loans he will need for the next season. Imagine if David ignores these steps. 6 months from now, his former spouse forgets to pay a joint medical bill from 3 years ago. The collection agency doesn't care about the divorce decree. They see David's name and report the delinquency. David's credit score drops 80 points overnight. When he goes to the co-op to buy seed for the spring, his credit is denied. This chain reaction of default is the primary reason why the online university emphasizes financial defense as a daily practice, not a one-time event. David's journey through the financial defense curriculum is about building a fortress of solitude around his credit and his cash flow. He has untangled the joint accounts, navigated the mortgage assumption, restructured his agricultural debt, and pruned his digital expenses. He is now standing on a stable, albeit tighter, financial foundation. But as the sun sets over his Iowa fields, David realizes that while his finances are secure, his daily life is still missing a critical component of the rural restart. He has fixed his money, but he has yet to master the social digital shield. The next phase of our masterclass moves from the balance sheet to the social fabric of rural life. We are going to explore the digital reputation management module. How do you handle the small-town gossip mill in the age of social media? How do you manage mutual friends and digital overlap in a community where everyone knows everyone? And most importantly, how do you protect your privacy and your children's digital footprint in a world that never forgets? You've secured your wallet, but now we have to secure your peace of mind. Next, we are looking at the social media, privacy, and small-town digital defense curriculum. The social media, privacy, and small-town digital defense curriculum is perhaps the most emotionally charged elective in our online divorce university. In a rural community, the line between private life and public knowledge has always been thin, but in 2026, that line has been erased by high-speed satellite internet and the hyperlocal nature of social media platforms. To understand how to navigate this, we must look at the case study of Elena, a resident of a small town in rural Alabama with a population of just 1,200 people. Elena is going through a dissolution in 2026, and she quickly realizes that her legal battle is being fought in 2 courtrooms, the one presided over by a judge, and the one moderated by the local community Facebook group. The first lesson in this module is the concept of digital hygiene and the immediate audit of your online footprint. Historical trends show that in 2026, over 70% of contested divorce cases involve some form of social media evidence. For Elena, the step-by-step process begins with a total platform lockdown. This isn't about hiding, it's about controlling the narrative. Elena's first move is to change the passwords on every single account she owns, from her email to her banking apps, and most importantly, her social media profiles. In a rural setting, it is common for couples to have shared devices or known passwords. In 2026, Elena uses a dedicated password manager to generate unique, high-entropy strings for every account and enables hardware-based 2-factor authentication. This prevents the unauthorized access that can lead to private messages being screenshotted and distributed through the town's gossip mill. Next, Elena must tackle the mutual friend problem. In a town of 1,200 people, everyone is a mutual friend. Elena uses the online university's filtration strategy to categorize her digital contacts. She creates a restricted list. This allows her to remain connected to people for the sake of community cohesion, while ensuring they cannot see her specific updates, location tags, or photos. The potential outcome of this strategy is the prevention of the accidental leak. Elena learns that even a seemingly innocent photo of a new purchase or a night out with friends can be misinterpreted or weaponized by an estranged spouse to argue about financial irresponsibility or lifestyle choices during a custody dispute. Imagine if Elena decided to vent her frustrations on a local forum. In the heat of the moment, she posts a vague status about the unfairness of the legal system or the character flaws of her spouse. In 2026, digital forensics tools are accessible and affordable. Her spouse's legal team could use automated scrapers to capture that post within seconds. Even if Elena deletes it 5 minutes later, It exists in the digital archives and can be used to demonstrate a lack of co-parenting cooperation or to claim emotional instability. The university curriculum teaches the 24-hour rule. Never post anything related to your personal life, your spouse, or your children until 24 hours after the impulse strikes. By then, the emotional spike has usually subsided, and the logical mind recognizes the risk. A major focus of this module is the geotagging and metadata trap. In 2026, every photo taken on a smartphone contains hidden data known as EXIF data, which includes the exact GPS coordinates of where the photo was taken. If Elena takes a photo of her children at a new playground or a friend's house and uploads it to a social platform, she is inadvertently broadcasting her location. In a rural area where safety and privacy are paramount, this is a significant security risk. The university provides a step-by-step tutorial on how to disable location services for camera apps and how to use metadata scrubbing tools before sharing any imagery. This digital geofencing is essential for maintaining the boundaries that a divorce decree is meant to establish. We must also discuss the children's digital permanent record. In 2026, the concept of sharenting, parents oversharing their children's lives online, has become a central issue in family law. The online university advocates for a digital co-parenting agreement. Elena and her spouse are encouraged to agree, in writing, on what can and cannot be posted regarding their children. This includes photos, school achievements, and location check-ins. Case studies from 2025 suggest that children in rural areas often feel the sting of a parent's public divorce more acutely because their peers see everything in real time. By limiting the children's exposure on social media, Elena is protecting their privacy and their right to a childhood that isn't defined by their parents' legal status. Then there is the small-town reputation management strategy. In a community where people have known each other for generations, the gossip mill is a powerful force. The university teaches the gray rock method of digital communication. When someone in the community reaches out via Messenger to dig for information or share a rumor, Elena is taught to respond with short, non-committal, and boring answers. She becomes a gray rock, uninteresting and providing nothing for the gossip to feed on. This prevents her from becoming a source of drama and slowly starves the community's interest in her private affairs. Historical trends indicate that when a party refuses to engage in digital warfare, the community eventually loses interest and moves on to the next topic. Privacy also extends to the physical world through digital means. In 2026, smart home technology is common even in rural farmhouses. Elena must perform a smart home audit. She checks the settings on her Ring cameras, her Nest thermostat, and even her smart refrigerator. Historical trends show that disgruntled spouses sometimes use these connected devices to monitor the other person's movements or to harass them by remotely changing the temperature or playing music. Elena learns how to reset the hub and reclaim her digital territory, ensuring that her home remains a private sanctuary. As Elena masters these digital defense mechanisms, she finds that her stress levels begin to drop. She is no longer looking over her shoulder every time she picks up her phone. She has secured her accounts, protected her children, and established a professional, neutral presence in the community's digital space. She has essentially built a digital moat around her new life. However, securing her privacy is only half the battle of the rural restart. As Elena looks toward her future, she realizes that the economic reality of being a single person in a rural area requires a total professional pivot. In 2026, the job market in rural Alabama is vastly different than it was a decade ago. The traditional roles are shifting, and the need for a sustainable, single-income career is more pressing than ever. Elena has the digital tools to defend her privacy, but does she have the digital skills to thrive in the 2026 economy? The Divorce University doesn't just stop at legalities and privacy. It moves into the territory of professional reinvention and the rural gig economy. The next phase of our masterclass moves from defense to offense. We are going to explore the career reinvention and remote work module. How do you find high-paying remote jobs from a rural zip code? How do you leverage your new digital skills to build a business that doesn't depend on the local town's limited economy? And most importantly, how do you manage the tax implications and insurance needs of a solo professional in 2026? You've secured your peace of mind, but now we have to secure your career. Next, we are looking at the Remote Career and Rural Economic Empowerment Curriculum. The professional pivot is the final required credit for graduation from the Online Divorce University, And in 2026, this module focuses on transforming a rural location from an economic handicap into a strategic headquarters. To visualize this transition, consider the case study of Thomas, a resident of a small town in northern New Hampshire. In 2026, Thomas has successfully finalized his divorce, but he is facing a daunting reality. The local manufacturing plant where he worked for 15 years has reduced its workforce by 60% due to automation. On a dual income, Thomas could survive the pay cut. On a single income, he must find a way to earn a salary that competes with urban renters while remaining in his rural zip code to be near his children. The first step in the career reinvention curriculum is the digital skill audit. Historical trends from the early 2020s to 2026 show that the greatest barrier to remote work for rural Americans was not a lack of work ethic, but a gap in specific digital literacy. The online university approach utilizes platforms like Coursera, edX, or specialized vocational trackers to identify transferable skills. Thomas realizes that his years managing inventory and logistics at the plant are not obsolete. They are simply in the wrong format. Step 1 of his transformation involves a 6-week intensive in cloud-based supply chain management software like SAP or Oracle. By translating his physical world experience into digital world certifications, Thomas positions himself for roles that pay 50 to 70% more than the local average. In 2026, the remote work landscape has matured. We are no longer in the era of temporary work-from-home experiments. Companies are now remote-first by design. For a rural resident, this is the great leveler. The university teaches you how to navigate specialized job boards like We Work Remotely or FlexJobs, which in 2026 have specific filters for rural residents who may have specialized knowledge in agriculture, logistics, or manufacturing. Thomas's strategy involves targeting firms in Boston or New York that require logistics coordinators, but are looking to reduce their own urban overhead. By working for a company in a high cost of living area while residing in a low-cost rural area, Thomas maximizes the purchasing power of his single income. However, moving into the world of remote work often means shifting from a W-2 employee to a 1099 independent contractor. This brings us to the complex world of the solo tax landscape. In the dual income era, Thomas's taxes were simple and largely automated. In 2026, as a solo professional, he must master the art of the quarterly estimated tax payment. The university curriculum provides a deep dive into IRS Form 1040-ES. Historical trends suggest that the number one reason new remote workers in rural communities face financial distress is the failure to set aside approximately 30% of every paycheck for federal and state taxes. Thomas learns to use digital bookkeeping software like QuickBooks or FreshBooks to automate this process, ensuring that when April arrives, he isn't hit with an insurmountable bill that threatens his housing stability. We must also address the home office deduction, specifically IRS Form 8829. For a rural resident in 2026, a dedicated office space isn't just a luxury. It is a significant tax strategy. Thomas is taught how to calculate the square footage of his dedicated workspace as a percentage of his entire home. This allows him to deduct a portion of his mortgage interest, utilities, and even the high-speed satellite internet costs that are essential for his role. Case studies from 2025 show that rural remote workers who properly utilize these deductions can lower their effective tax rate significantly, offsetting the loss of the spouse's income. Insurance is the next high-stakes hurdle. In the United States, healthcare is frequently tied to employment, and in a divorce, many rural residents lose coverage because they were on their spouse's employer-sponsored plan. The online university guides you through the complexities of COBRA and the Affordable Care Act or ACA. In 2026, the healthcare marketplace has become highly localized. Thomas must navigate the various tiers, bronze, silver, and gold, to find a plan that actually provides coverage in his remote region. A historical trend to note is the rise of telehealth exclusive plans. For someone in rural New Hampshire, a plan that focuses on virtual visits may be more practical and affordable than one that requires a 40-mile drive to a participating clinic. Thomas learns to verify the network of providers before enrolling, ensuring that his local primary care physician is included. Then there is the issue of life and disability insurance. As a single parent and the sole provider, Thomas's ability to work is his greatest asset. If he were to become injured or ill, the financial impact would be catastrophic. The university curriculum explains the difference between short-term and long-term disability insurance, and why a private policy may be superior to the limited coverage offered by some remote platforms. By securing a policy that covers at least 60% of his income, Thomas builds a safety net that protects his family's future, a potential outcome that provides the peace of mind necessary to focus on his career growth. Professional branding in the digital age is the final offensive strategy. Thomas must learn how to present his rural location as an advantage, not a limitation. In 2026, this involves a sophisticated LinkedIn presence and a digital portfolio. The university teaches him how to showcase his reliability, his unique perspective on regional logistics, and his mastery of asynchronous communication tools like Slack, Notion, and Loom. Case studies show that employers in 2026 value rural workers for their perceived stability and lower turnover rates. Thomas leans into this narrative, presenting himself as a seasoned professional who brings a grounded, pragmatic approach to high-stakes digital environments. As Thomas secures his first high-paying remote contract, the economic empowerment phase of the divorce university reaches its peak. He has replaced his local factory wage with a national-level salary. He has mastered his taxes, secured his own insurance, and built a professional brand that transcends his geography. He is no longer surviving the divorce. He is thriving in its aftermath. But even with the finances secured and the career on track, one final challenge remains. The ultimate test of any rural restart isn't the money or the job. It is the long-term management of the people who matter most. In the 2026 rural landscape, co-parenting is no longer just about who has the kids on which weekend. It is about navigating a complex web of school schedules, extracurriculars, and the logistics of shared custody across vast distances. How do you handle the high-octane emotional labor of co-parenting in a small town? How do you manage the unexpected emergencies that happen when you are the only adult in the house? And most importantly, how do you prepare for the eventual introduction of new people into this carefully constructed solo life? The next phase of our masterclass moves into the final modules of the Rural Restart: long-term co-parenting and personal growth. We are going to explore the digital parenting coordinator tools, the psychology of parallel parenting in a small community, and the roadmap for emotional recovery. You've built the fortress, you've secured the treasury, and now we have to make sure the life inside those walls is one of peace and purpose. Next, we are looking at the Advanced Co-Parenting and Personal Evolution curriculum. Advanced co-parenting and personal evolution represent the final, most enduring stage of the divorce university curriculum. In the rural landscape of 2026, the success of a divorce is no longer measured solely by the division of the tractor or the allocation of the 401k, but by the stability of the family structure that remains. To see this in action, we look at the case study of Maria, a resident of a remote timber community in eastern Oregon. Maria and her former spouse live nearly 80 miles apart, separated by winding mountain roads that are frequently closed by snow for 4 months of the year. In 2026, Maria does not rely on verbal agreements or casual text messages to manage the lives of her 3 children. She utilizes the Advanced Digital Co-Parenting module, a system that turns logistical nightmares into a streamlined, evidence-based operation. The first step in the co-parenting curriculum is the transition to a centralized digital communication hub. Historical trends from 2023 to 2026 show that the vast majority of post-decree litigation stems from miscommunications regarding schedules and expenses. Maria uses high-level platforms like Our Family Wizard or Talking Parents, which in 2026 have been integrated into many rural court standing orders. These are not mere messaging apps. They are legal repositories. Every message is time-stamped and cannot be deleted or altered. For Maria, this means the end of the he said she said cycle. If her former spouse claims he didn't know about a school play or a doctor's appointment in the city, Maria can point to the shared calendar, which serves as the single source of truth. A critical tool in Maria's 2026 toolkit is the AI-driven tone meter. This technology analyzes messages before they are sent, flagging aggressive or inflammatory language. In a high-conflict situation, this acts as a digital cooling-off period. Case studies suggest that when parents are forced to rephrase their messages to meet a neutral standard, the overall conflict level in the household drops by nearly 30% within the first 6 months. Maria learns to use this tool to maintain a business-like relationship with her former spouse. The university teaches that you are no longer romantic partners. You are co-managers of a high-stakes project, the well-being of your children. Now imagine the rural handoff. In 2026, Maria and her former spouse have a right of first refusal clause tailored for rural distances. If one parent is unavailable for more than 12 hours, the other must be offered the time. However, in Oregon's timber country, a 12-hour window is often consumed by the travel time itself. The university curriculum helps Maria draft a specialized travel addendum. This document specifies the exact midway point for exchanges, typically a well-lit, public gas station equipped with high-definition security cameras. It also outlines the snow day protocol. If the pass is closed, the protocol dictates an immediate, automatic shift to a virtual visitation schedule via high-bandwidth video, preventing the panic and accusations of interference that used to characterize rural winters. But what if the conflict is too high for even digital co-parenting? This is where the curriculum introduces parallel parenting. This is an advanced strategy for high-conflict scenarios where traditional cooperation is impossible. In a parallel parenting model, Maria and her former spouse operate as two separate islands. They do not attend the same parent-teacher conferences. They do not sit together at sporting events. And they communicate only through the digital portal regarding essential medical or educational information. Historical trends indicate that for children, two calm, separate environments are infinitely better than one volatile, shared environment. Maria learns that parallel parenting is not a failure of the divorce. It is a sophisticated boundary-setting technique that protects the children from the crossfire of adult resentment. While Maria is managing the logistics of her children's lives, she is also enrolled in the Personal Evolution module. In a rural community, the loss of a spouse often feels like the loss of an entire social network. In 2026, Maria counters this through telehealth integrated support. Rural isolation is no longer a barrier to high-quality mental health care. Maria accesses a specialized transition therapist via a secure video link, focusing on cognitive behavioral therapy to reframe her identity. She also joins a virtual support group specifically for rural solo parents. These groups, often organized by statewide nonprofits, provide a space where Maria can discuss the unique challenges of rural life, like the difficulty of dating in a town where you are related to half the population, without the fear of local gossip. The evolution of self also involves the health and vitality audit. In the dual-income era, Maria often put her own physical health last. In 2026, as a solo head of household, she realizes that her health is a critical infrastructure point. She utilizes wearable biometric technology to track her stress levels and sleep patterns, data points that her telehealth provider uses to adjust her wellness plan. This is the biohacking for the solo parent elective. By maintaining her physical resilience, Maria ensures she has the energy to manage the ranch, her remote career, and her children simultaneously. Case studies from 2025 show that the most successful rural restarts occur when the individual intentionally builds a new circle. For Maria, this means seeking out new community roles that are independent of her former married life. She joins the board of a regional land trust and starts a virtual book club for women in timber country. These actions are not just hobbies. They are the intentional reconstruction of a social fortress. The university teaches that your reputation in a small town is your currency, and by being a visible, productive, and calm member of the community, Maria effectively neutralizes the narrative of the broken home. As Maria moves through her first full year of solo life, she encounters the anniversary spikes, the holidays, birthdays, and the date the decree was signed. The curriculum prepares her for these emotional hurdles with a strategic solitude plan. Instead of dreading the first Christmas morning without the children, Maria plans a professional development retreat or a trip to a neighboring state. By being proactive rather than reactive to her emotions, she turns a potential breakdown into a breakthrough of self-reliance. Graduation from this part of the university is marked by the shift from the grief cycle to the growth cycle. Maria is no longer looking back at what was lost. She is looking forward to the legacy she is building. She has mastered the tools of digital co-parenting, established the boundaries of parallel parenting, and invested in her own psychological and physical health. She is a specialized operative in the field of her own life. But as Maria stands on her porch in the Oregon mountains, one final question remains. She has built the system, but how does she ensure it lasts for the next 20 years? How does she integrate all these lessons into a permanent, legacy-driven lifestyle that protects her assets and her family for generations to come? The final phase of our masterclass moves from the day-to-day survival into the territory of long-term integration and legacy. We are going to explore the estate planning for the solo rural resident, the digital legacy locker, and the final graduation ceremony of the divorce university. We will show you how to turn your newfound independence into a generational wealth and stability engine. You've survived the storm, you've rebuilt the house, and now we are going to make sure that house stands forever. Next, we are looking at the ultimate finale: integration, estate protection, and the legacy of the rural solo. Integration, estate protection, and the legacy of the rural solo represent the final capstone project in the divorce university curriculum. In 2026, the goal is no longer just to survive the legal process, but to ensure that the hard-won independence you have secured is protected against the unforeseen variables of the future. To understand the gravity of this final stage, we look at the case study of Jackson, a resident of a small community in rural Georgia who operates a specialized agricultural drone service. Jackson has successfully navigated the 1,000-day journey from his initial filing to his final decree, but as he stands in his workshop in 2026, he realizes that his legal house is still technically built on a foundation of his past life. The first critical module in this finale is the estate audit and the total restructuring of testamentary documents. Historical trends indicate that a staggering 40% of divorced individuals in rural America fail to update their primary estate documents within the first 3 years of their decree. For Jackson, this is a catastrophic risk. Imagine if Jackson were involved in a significant accident while out in the field. Despite being legally divorced for over a year, his 2018 will still names his former spouse as the sole beneficiary of his business and his family land. In many jurisdictions, a divorce decree does not automatically invalidate a will. The step-by-step process of the estate audit begins with the immediate revocation of all prior wills and the drafting of a new, solo-focused testamentary trust. In 2026, Jackson utilizes a secure, state-specific online legal platform to draft a revocable living trust. This is a strategic move for the rural resident because it allows his estate to avoid the lengthy and public probate process. In a small town, probate is not just a legal hurdle. It is a public disclosure of your entire financial life. By placing his land and his business into a trust, Jackson ensures that his assets pass directly to his chosen heirs, his children, without the intervention of a court or the prying eyes of the community. He also designates a successor trustee, perhaps a trusted sibling or a professional fiduciary, who understands the unique needs of a rural business. Beyond the will, Jackson must address the power of attorney and the Advance Healthcare Directive. These are the documents that define who speaks for you when you cannot speak for yourself. In 2026, medical technology in rural Georgia has advanced, but the legal framework remains rigid. If Jackson is hospitalized and hasn't updated his healthcare proxy, the hospital may be forced to look to his next of kin, which in a complex family structure could lead back to the very conflict he just escaped. The university curriculum teaches the importance of the digital medical vault, a secure, cloud-based folder containing these updated directives that can be accessed by emergency responders via a QR code on Jackson's phone or a medical alert bracelet. This ensures that his wishes regarding his care and his end-of-life decisions are respected, a potential outcome that secures his personal autonomy. The second module focuses on the beneficiary cleanup. This is the hidden estate. Many of Jackson's most valuable assets, such as his solo 401k, his life insurance policy, and his bank accounts, are governed by beneficiary designations that supersede any will or trust. Historical trends show that many individuals forget to update the TOD transfer on death orders at their local banks. Jackson must perform a line-by-line audit of every financial instrument he owns. In 2026, this is done through a centralized financial dashboard that aggregates his accounts. He must ensure that his former spouse is removed and his trust or his children are named as the primary beneficiaries. Failing to do this one simple task can result in hundreds of thousands of dollars being paid out to an ex-spouse, regardless of what the divorce decree says. The third pillar of the finale is the digital legacy and cybersecurity module. In 2026, your digital life is an asset class. Jackson's agricultural drone business relies on proprietary flight data, customer databases, and specialized software licenses. If Jackson were to pass away, his heirs need the keys to the castle. The online university teaches the implementation of a digital asset memorandum. This is a secure document that lists all digital accounts, from social media to crypto wallets to business portals, and provides instructions on how to access them. Jackson uses an encrypted password vault with the legacy contact feature, ensuring that his digital legacy is not lost to the void of forgotten passwords. Now, we move into the concept of the legacy of the rural solo. This is the psychological and community-based evolution of the graduate. In 2026, Jackson has become more than just a drone operator. He has become a mentor. He realizes that the knowledge he gained in the divorce university is a valuable commodity in his legal desert. He begins to participate in rural economic development forums, sharing his experience with remote work and solo financial management. This is the transformation from a person who was going through a divorce to a person who has mastered a complex life transition. Case studies from similar rural restarts suggest that individuals who pivot to a mentorship or community leadership role experience a 50% higher rate of long-term life satisfaction. The final step is the wealth accumulation and rural investment strategy. On a single income in 2026, Jackson is no longer saving for a joint retirement. He is building a solo empire. He utilizes the tax-advantaged strategies we discussed in earlier modules, like the solo 401k or the SEP IRA, to accelerate his wealth building. He also looks at land integration. Instead of just maintaining his property, he explores sustainable land use, perhaps leasing a portion for solar energy or regenerative farming. This diversifies his income streams, ensuring that he is not dependent on a single contract or a single industry. He is building a fortress that can withstand the economic fluctuations of the late 2020s. Imagine if Jackson had stopped at the decree. He would be legally single but financially and legally vulnerable. By completing this final module, he has ensured that his life is bulletproof. He has his trust in place, his beneficiaries updated, his digital legacy secured, and his community role established. He is no longer a student of the process. He is a master of his domain. As we conclude this deep dive masterclass, it is important to reflect on the journey. You started in the legal desert, facing the daunting reality of a system that wasn't built for your geography. You learned to assemble your own documents, navigate virtual mediation, and stand before a digital bench. You untangled your debts, secured your privacy, and reinvented your career for the 2026 economy. You mastered the logistics of co-parenting across the rural expanse, and finally, you built a legacy that will stand for generations. The Divorce University Online in U.S. rural communities is not a physical place. It is the collective resilience of people like Sarah, Michael, Robert, David, Elena, Thomas, Maria, and Jackson. It is a movement that has turned the rural penalty into a rural advantage. You have the tools, the technology, and the roadmap. The potential outcomes of this journey are limited only by your willingness to do the work and your commitment to your own evolution. Your decree is not just a piece of paper. It is your diploma. And with that diploma comes the freedom to build a life that is truly yours. The gates of the university are always open. The curriculum is always evolving, and your new life in the rural American landscape is just beginning. As you step out of the digital classroom and into your future, remember that the distance to the courthouse never defined your worth. It only measured your determination. You have graduated. Now go build your legacy.